let's talk about the religious freedom legislation which is coming in. Now, I'll be honest with you, Cory. I've always had issues with the religious freedom legislation, not because I don't want certain protections for people of certain faith in organisations in which they own, they control, not to do things that sort of, the far left wants them to do. But I don't think you can ever come up with a form of legislation that is perfect enough, and there are different faiths that have different thresholds. What do you think about this? I know it's a last-minute delivery on an election promise, but to me, unless you're going to fully deliver for some, you kind of don't deliver for many. And that, of course, in the lead up to an election, only creates problems.
Yeah, Paul, I tend to agree with you in the principle of this. As soon as you seek to codify what freedoms are available to people of religion, you then run the risk, I guess, of having them weaponised, used against them. You're also limiting freedoms, which I think in some respects, because they're codified, may actually have an adverse effect. And that's always been my concern with this. And what I understand is in this bill, and I haven't seen it yet, but what I understand is in it is kind of like an 18C for religious discrimination. And that in itself is a problem. It had the best of intentions, 18C, with the Racial Discrimination Act, but it's since been weaponised and used to punish people, and the process becomes part of the punishment. Now, I also understand Christian Porter did very little to appease concerns of others. Michaelia Cash, the new AG, has done a heck of a lot in that space, but I still think it's fraught with danger, and I don't really know why it's necessary, except maybe the woke left and maybe what's happened to Israel Folau have pushed people over an edge that they didn't think they would previously. But whether this is the right solution or not, hey, Parliament will have their vote on it.
Yeah, I mean, Jenna, I know what the logic is here, which is basically if the Labor Party ends up voting against religious freedom, it's a message that the government can put particularly to religious conservatives in Labor electorates. Remember, most likely the places that ended up actually voting no at that last election were minority ethnic communities that also have Labor MPs. So you can see what the political game is here, and that's fine, and I understand the thinking behind it, but I care about what the law is as well. Because, in the same way that the lefties bullshit about, gay kids being booted out of school, there's no examples of it anywhere, or gay teachers being sacked, again, there's no examples of it anywhere. Also, I don't want that to be the case of what happens anywhere. It's an interesting frame up about how you do this, because obviously you don't think that a Catholic-run health institution should have to implement euthanasia laws.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And when you speak of things like VAD, voluntary assisted dying, which nearly every jurisdiction in the country has dealt with at a state level, state and territory level, Paul, that is one really big issue. We saw Dominic Perrottet stand up and say, look, because of my faith, I don't really want to vote on this, and I have issues around, certain institutions administering euthanasia because it's against their faith. I think Michaelia Cash, we're yet to see the bill, but what the drops with some of the papers that have received shows that she's done, like Cory said, a heck of a lot of work with probably 1 billion stakeholders involved in this, health professionals, church groups, religious groups from all sides. So I think the conscientious objection clause that has been sort of watered down and removed is probably one way that she got through to the moderates in the party. But I think the proof will be in the pudding, and dare I say it, the devil will definitely be in the detail when we see what this looks like in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, it is also an interesting question, though, Cory, where the Labor Party has this stranglehold on minority ethnic communities that often have very different social beliefs than, the Christina Keneally's that get dropped on top of them that end up being their MP. And we saw that in the same-sex marriage debate. Now, obviously, someone at some point in time will crack through. I always think it's kind of racist to suggest that people vote one way based off their ethnicity. But, the Labor Party kind of bets on that to some degree, because if they're actually betting on values, if they're actually voting on values, then they're going anywhere but the Labor Party or the Greens.
Yeah, that's true. And unfortunately, a lot of the people in Australia don't scrutinise the parties because of the values or what the policy positions. They're a bit tribal in that respect. But at some point it comes, and we saw this in America, Paul, with the Democrats. They rely on the Hispanic vote, the black vote to get them over the line. They take them for granted. Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you're not black. But in the last, elections in the States, a lot of Hispanics broke away to the Republicans. A lot of black voters went to the Republicans. And that'll happen to Labor too, with some of the ethnic minorities that they've taken for granted, and now they're trampling over their values and their beliefs eventually they'll wake up and go, hang on, this is not the party for us. This is not the party of aspiration. We want something that reflects our lived experience and our value system. And quite frankly, the more people think about politics, Paul, the better off this country will be.